Hey everyone, Butley here. I'm joined with my faithful co-commentator Patch.
Hello, I'm a faithful co-commentator.
Yep, I couldn't think of anything more creative than that. You're
You could have called
faithful
me. You
and also
could have called
co.
me, your good friend War Lemming.
My good friend War Lemming that we keep bringing up. People are gonna believe that he's not real, right? Because we always talk about him, and he always has these like profound different opinions to us, but he never shows up.
He's real to me, and that's what matters.
That's what matters. Oh, I wish he was there to hear that. Dear. So we're playing Tactics Ogre, and as we, what did we do last time? We met the Beastmaster, Gamp, and we slaughtered his birds, and he was really unhappy about that. And he basically ran away crying like a little bitch.
Wow, I hope no one ever kills your family and calls you a little bitch.
Wow,
She was on the
dark. What am I, Bruce Wayne? Thing. Today we're putting in a bit of training.
Sorry.
I don't even know. That was just the first like folk hero person that I could think of that didn't have a family.
Are we going back to the Jack Nicholson, the Tim Burton one, where Jack Nicholson played the Joker and killed Bruce Wayne's parents?
Nah,
Did
that's
he?
alright.
Is it a modernized version of that where he calls little Bruce Wayne a little bitch?
I can imagine Jack Nicholson doing that. I bet that wasn't even in the script.
Yeah.
That was just Jack Nicholson. I know how to play me better than anyone.
They weren't planning it to be the Joker, it just turned out that way.
he was contracted as someone else, and he just started being crazy, and they're like, this is kind of jokery. Let's put that in. Oh dear. I reckon that's a thing of the past that probably doesn't happen as much these days. You get actors, and they work harder to understand the roles and really live them, and I don't mean like method acting, because that's sort of different. That's where you get like Jared Leto, who just was totally spastic on Suicide Squad. I don't mean like that. I just mean like, yeah, you give someone a character. Like, imagine Keanu Reeves doing Neo in The Matrix. It's pretty obvious that he would have had a fair amount of like, I understand this character. Here's some things that they should do. Like, it feels like it has very Keanu Reeves-y kind of influence on how the character acted as well.
Well, I think the big one is the old Harrison Ford in just in everything. In Star Wars, there was the I know line. In Indiana Jones, there was the famous shooting the swordsman scene, which came about just because he was sick on that day and he didn't want to do the action scene. So it was like, here, I know what to do.
It's a very Indiana Jones kind of thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the thing. I don't know how much that happens these days. Like, as funny as, say, Chris Pratt is, how much, like, did he ad-lib anything on Guardians of the Galaxy? You know, did he just sort of, this is a script, it's pretty funny, I'll just deal with it, you know? I wonder if Ryan Reynolds in Deadpool, like, he's the type of guy who you think would try and, like, just say weird stuff and hopefully they'll keep it, but I don't know if he did. I just wonder if that's a dying art. I don't know Hollywood at all, but...
I don't know if I can think of any actor in this day and age who has the talent and the confidence to pull off something like that.
Well, I think
it's
it's like
more of an old actor thing.
Yeah, and I think some of it's the pressure of modern film. It's the whole, you know, we have to make Marvel movies because they make money, so we make them pretty safe. I mean, they're still enjoyable, but they're definitely safe. That's why they don't like win awards at the Golden Globes. See, it's a timed reference. It's why like the artier projects win awards and stuff like that, because they're trying to encourage like more creative, you know, plots and themes and screenwriting and direction, which is cool too. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of like safety in a lot of high budget movies these days, and I wonder if that takes away from some of the natural talent, ad-libbing and understanding characters of some of the good actors out there. Like, my point is probably I just wonder if we're not selling the actors short rather than, You know, it's not like the actors don't want to do that. I'm sure actors would love the ability to act and add their own thing to things.
Yeah.
But there's probably like, no, you can't change the script. No, you can't make things like that because it changes this. You know, there's such a tightly wound machine of this needs to be this, needs to be this. Maybe they don't have that flexibility anymore.
Also, I just wanted to say, if this is your first time viewing, what are you doing on episode 38? Go back to the start. We just talk about whatever. We don't actually focus on the game all that much, especially not when it's training.
Right, the point is, like, I could cut this out, but look, the series is supposed to be... I always say this. We have these conversations anyway. We literally started this video because we were talking about something, which we haven't got to, by mind you. And, and we were like, why are we talking about this? Why don't we just record?
Yeah.
And then we'll put that... like, we've got Tactics Ogre episodes backed up. Why don't we just put one of them on and chat in voice instead of just talking to each other? And so that's all this series is, and there's a bit of Tactics Ogre in the background that we talk about from time to time. This is basically me trying to show off the game to patch as well, so... Cause I love this game. I'm gonna, once I finish this, I'm gonna go back and play through it multiple times more.
Did we want to talk about what we were talking about before? Or are we happy to talk about actors and stuff?
I don't know, do you have anything to add?
I don't really think I have much to say on the topic of actors, to be honest.
Waffling for the sake of waffling. Do you see what I tried?
Oh,
I tried to shield her under the bramble bush. How rude. Honestly, my character should get like evil points for that. It's one thing to knock someone over the edge, but to knock them onto a bush. Because that would seriously hurt.
That's some old freaking... That's some Fable logic there. You cast this thing, you're evil now. Some old RPG logic.
Get horns. Get like ethereal horns above my head. I don't know, Fable 1 was cool in its time. It had creative ideas.
No, I just mean it's really sort of an old thing where it's like certain spells make you evil, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Are you trying to finish him off with her?
I wasn't trying to, but I thought it'd be funny. I was like, come on, he's got 3 health, you got this. I actually moved her there as like a sacrifice, so we can't get to my archer. Because what you'll notice is that Martine she's the DPS. She just spits out everything in the moment. Because we're not really using any like swordsmen or dragoons or knights. We're basically just relying on our archers to deal all the damage. And here you'll find I'm just checking if you get different benefits for being on different elevation or facing the front or the back of the character. And the answer's no.
Yeah, fair enough.
So what is it in his right hand there, Donalto? Is it like a book, do you think? The blue thing?
I don't know, it looks kind of like it could be anything, like cloth or
he's supposed
a
to be
herb
like a priest, right? So I always assumed it was like a book of prayers or something, but I don't know.
I honestly can't tell, it's too small, that object.
It doesn't, and it also doesn't expand well into full screen.
Yeah.
Like maybe if it was smaller and more, like better defined, it might look a bit clearer. In what do you call it? In like size of magnitude compared to him. Why are we doing this? Oh, I know why I'm doing this, because there's another thing come up and there's a side quest and I don't know when it expires. Like if you advance the story it might leave and it's actually really tough, and I decided to just train a little bit to see if I could get ready to deal with that side quest. And so that's why we're doing a bit of training and not a lot else at the moment.
Fair enough.
That's why, normally when I train, I just take the lower classes and try and level them up. That's why we brought out our full team. And there's also, like, a lot of our characters are, like almost a whole level ahead. Like, where we've been using 2 knights in almost every fight, the knights are miles ahead. The rune fencers are miles ahead, so I've tried to, start using different classes. Just trying to balance everything out a bit. I really want this ninja class to get up because they have some really cool stuff that you can use them for, but it's kind of tough. Kind of need them just to tail on for a bit. Yay, copper.
So, what I was rambling about before the video started was Civs, because we played a little bit of Civ 6 recently. One of the things that put us off playing Civ 6 initially was the lack of team play, which is really a big drive for us. And obviously the game on initial release was a bit of a mess for a Civs game, and so we were sort of going to hold out until there was team play available, so we could actually, do stuff as a group with our friends.
We're the type of group that, hey, we got a new team member.
Yeah.
We got some of our fondest memories of Civs, and this stems back to Civ 4. Is literally just getting a 5-person team and jamming together and trying to play, and just ramping up ramping up a bit of difficulty on the AI and trying to work as a team and playing that way. Warts and all, it doesn't matter because Civs is the type of game you can play and then just chat about other things and just like this kind of thing. The game's on, but you're kind of just doing other things as well. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And so we've always liked playing co-op.
Yeah, and the point is we've been playing it. That was all I was trying to say. And while playing it, I sort of noticed, and this applies to Civs 5 too, and I'll probably use Civs 5 as more of an example since I am more familiar with it and I can better describe it. But yeah, in Civs 5 and Civ 6, I've noticed that a lot of the stuff I do, kind of, I don't want to say inconsequential. It's more like a lot of the stuff my enemies do is inconsequential. The amount of direct interaction with the other players in the game, with the AI especially, is really quite minimal. What I mean is, you can play the entire game basically without having any interaction with the AI. You can win the game without having any sort of counterplay against your strategy, just by favorable circumstances. It's gotten a little better in Civ 6 with religion being a win condition, but things like science, you can win the game with science without any interaction. What's the other one? Tourism? Tourism is basically very little interaction. And it's really, I've noticed this from these two games and a couple other games really, the other games being grand strategy games that we've both played, that all these new features that they tend to add to these games, they typically tend to be non-interactive features. They're features where it gives you more stuff to do on your turn and more stuff to do in your nation, but it doesn't give more stuff to play around, if you know what I mean. What I mean is,
give you an incentive to do anything with them is the point. They're so insignificant.
Yeah. Well, what I mean is, if you play a certain strategy in a game with you start in a certain place and you play a certain strategy, and you play one game with AI and one game without AI, the strategy you apply in those two situations is going to be very similar. The only thing that is going to change is things like wonders you won't be able to get, religion, and combat. And combat is so downplayed in Civs now. Like the last few Civs games, it happens, combat happens, but it doesn't feel like quite on as large a scale as it did in Civs 4, which is where I mostly draw my, basis of opinions about Civs from.
Well,
in Civs 4, the game was. Sorry, well, I was just going to say, in Civs 4, the majority of how you won the game was through combat. You had to expand a really big nation, and then you had to conquer people to stop them from succeeding, and they had to conquer you to stop you from succeeding. And come Civs 5 and Civ 6, there were times where it was incentivized? You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, where it wasn't positive to go to war, and sometimes it was actually negative, and it completely, discouraged going to war. And that feels like a negative trait to the game, because outside of war, there is actually very little counterplay you can have stopping someone trying to achieve their win condition.
No, you're right. I think, they don't want... how do you explain? They want to give you more to do, but if you're not building up to conquest or some sort of war, leveled faction or style, then like everything else is kind of pointless, you know? Like the win conditions in science and tourism are fine, but they're a little bit arbitrary. Like it's just numbers, you know? I need to get the bigger science number, so I need to get this because it gives me a bigger number, and it doesn't really change your style or anything. And if you're trying to build to a conquest victory, you need certain types of units. You need the rock, scissors, paper of unit types. You need to know when to attack. You need to position them. You know, all that kind of thing. And then you need the economy to support it. You need the happiness and health and the cities and stuff to support it. And so conquest has so much more depth to it, which is what you're sort of trying to say. If you take the other avenues, you're just number pushing until you win.
Well, you know what I think the other thing is I think in Civs 4, combat favored the attacker. If you went first, you had a better chance of winning. You had more favorable outcomes because you could hit them with your siege first and weaken all their troops. And, you know, you got that opportunity to take the lead.
And it had
Whereas
unit priorities and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, the unit priorities favored the defender, but as the attacker, you could weaken your enemy first.
Right.
And come Civs 5, that flipped. It became the defender's sort of, you know, advantage. Not in open field terrain, but I mean, when you're attacking a city, it was always better, like, to attack... Sorry, this was a poor way of explaining. If you're defending your city in Civs 4, it was best to attack your enemy with your siege, to weaken their units so that they couldn't attack your city, and maybe pick off some of their siege, pick off some of their units, you know?
Right, you still had to work towards pushing them out. You couldn't just camp.
Yeah, because if you stayed there and camped, they would destroy your defenses, and then they'd attack you with their siege, and then they'd attack you with their units, and you would be weakened and crippled and vulnerable. Whereas come Civs 5 and Civs 6, well, maybe it's mostly Civs 5, it definitely favors the defender, because the base now attacks. Your cities now can attack. So if you try and encroach on a city, that city starts to hit you and plus all their units. And the longer the game went on, especially for ranged units, it became very arduous to attack into a city with some artillery on it. Like they had 3 range. Territories, borders, to declare war, you usually stepped into 3 range. You might not even be able to see or hit their artillery. And then they get the first shot, basically. And
trying
that
to find, like, and that's without talking the difficulties of terrain. It's so easy in Civs 5 to set yourself up
to block
with terrain. Even if your main city isn't on terrain, just having having the terrain around you being rough or hilly or with rivers, it just stops all these people from getting close. It was terrible.
I think Civ 6 has actually made the terrain even more aggressive in that now units can't manipulate their 2 steps. You know, if you don't have 2 steps, you cannot walk up a hill or walk through a forest.
I'll be honest, I haven't even got to a point in Civ 6 where I can test that, because I've never had a war that tough or taking that long, or I crank up the difficulty to maximum in Civ 6 and I don't even break a sweat. It's just, and it's not, because I think, like you say, the AI doesn't care about war. They're just trying to optimize, and you might not still win. I'm not saying always win on high difficulties. I'm just saying that war doesn't become particularly difficult, and I can still go about my business pretty much always ignoring all my opponents.
Yeah, you never feel particularly intimidated by the threat of war. People denouncing you or warning you doesn't really seem to hold any weight to it. It's more like something that they just do when you're, making them angry and not doing much. And it's just sort of like... yeah, and it's very... And I know why it's like that. Like, we've examined why combat is like that, because terrain is now such a big impact. Because of 1 unit per tile, or the Armada system, because of all that, it's very limiting on how armies can really contribute to the game. I almost feel like they need to knock, military unit production costs down by about half, so you can produce more and more units. Because when you have a war, you want a big scale war. You don't want, I'm going to attack with my 10 units, and he's got 6 guys around his city. You want something big and sprawling and to feel really epic. I mean, these games are at their heart, they're 4X games, which is explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate. And you don't do a lot of exterminating Civs 5 or
Especially
Civ
with
6.
the hex grid style that they ran.
Yeah.
They should really be encouraging like combat around that style, you know, because you can position yourself and you can fight, but most battles are just 2 or 3 units fighting 2 or 3 units, and that's it. That's all you have on hand at the time, you know. It's pretty terrible.
Again, I get why they moved away from the Doom stack. I disagree with it to this day. But one thing you could say about the Doom stacks was you had 2 giant armies standing off across each other, and again, it favored the attacker. If you wanted to attack a city especially, like there was a lot that went into that. You would never attack across a river. You'd always try and get favorable terrain, like defensive terrain, when you're attacking them, just in case they go for you first. You would try and stand on a hill or, somewhere where you would have cover from their counterattacks. And then once you're in position with all your forces, you're confident you can win, you'd send in your siege units, and then you'd send in your other units, Yep. And it would be a pattern. And there was a certain degree of strategy involved in that. Whereas in Civs 5 and Civ 6, it's more about where do I position these 5 or 6 units around this city to get best damage coverage and then capture it all in one go.
Yeah, it's like you need to make a circle of the city because that's what you do. And
to a degree, that is probably a bit more realistic, sieging a city. But these games aren't meant to be 100% realistic.
It's just fun.
Yeah, combat should be fun. And when I'm not having fun in, my strategy game, it's really disappointing. I had a conversation about this recently with a person online to do with Crusader Kings and how I was disappointed by the combat. And they said, well, it's not really a combat game. And I was surprised by this because majority of what you do to progress in that game is combat. If you want to gain new territory, you go to war. If you want to do the Crusades, you go to war. And the other main part of that is like managing your lineage and your allies. And it was really strange to hear someone say it's not a combat game when that's, half of the gameplay basically.
Kind of is, yeah.
Yeah, and it was really sort of like, and that's why I brought up these grand strategy games earlier, is because it applies to them as well. A lot of them, they have all these bells and whistles, and you've got, all your religion, you've got all your ideas and EU4, you've got colonizing, you've got all these different things, but when you get down to it, the majority of how the game changes, how the world moves and evolves, is you fight people, and you conquer them, and you kill them. And the combat in these games is just, there's nothing to it, basically. You just have death stacks. Like, even simpler death stacks than Civs 4, or at least there was some strategy involved in your death stacks. This is just have the big number.
Yeah, and I have a lot of problems with Civ 6, but I find that one of the main reasons why you never focus on military is actually because they've made the incentives and the boosts to tech and culture based on doing certain things. You know what I'm talking about, right? The Eureka moments and things like that. It's like, build 3 farms and you get a 50% boost to irrigation tech so you can research it in half the time. And I feel like that is it really wrecks the game because you spend the whole time just looking at what tech do I want, what things do I need to achieve to make that tech easier. And at that point, I'm not really playing a strategy. I'm not really saying, oh, my strategy is to do this or I want to do that. I'm literally just looking at it going, all right, well, what's my next thing? I'm not saying, oh, I want to win by, excuse me, culture or science, or I'm not saying I want irrigation. I'm just looking at like what benefits do I need, what buffs do I need. I'm not, and a lot of these things aren't military either. Like there are some that are like build a few boats and stuff, or kill something with a spearman, but there's not enough of it going around to encourage me to be a warlike people. I'm not really creating a strategy to build the game in the direction I want to build the game. I'm just looking at these things going, oh, how do I get my stat jumps? Or how do I get my tech jumps? And it just kills it for me. I really have trouble being interested in...
You know what? It actually reminds me a lot of these grand strategy games, now that I think about it. You know, one of the things they started introducing into the games was sort of like penalties for making people angry at you. And these penalties were typically from going to war and conquering territory. The people around you would get increasingly angry if you conquered lots and lots. I can't remember what they're called, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Like in EU4, when you conquer too many places.
Oh, like an expansion penalty and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, things like that. And the people around you start forming like coalitions against you and stuff like that. And the problem that comes up with that is over the time is it makes you not want to go to war because you're getting penalized for it. And this is especially bad in Civs 5 and 6. If you get the warmonger penalty, that stays with you the entire game, and the AI does not forgive you that. Like, that's it. You've got the warmonger, you are warmonger forever, basically. And it's so
they're just arbitrary
terrible
caps to stop you from attacking. And the problem is once you stack a few of those arbitrary things, like in the Paradox games you're talking about, you know, you need Casus Bellis, and then you need, you know, certain other things, and stability, and like there's a list of features that let you and stop you from going to war. And there's too many of them. One of them's aggressive expansion and stuff like that.
That's the one, aggressive expansion.
And one of them is, like I say, having a Casus Belli. One of them's having stability, and then there's
war exhaustion.
War exhaustion, and you know, just all these things. And so when you stack them all together, it really does like limit the desire to go to war. Like in those games, you have to wiggle it, but you tend to find you go to war and then you just sort of AFK for 10 years and then you go to war again. Like that's literally what it
crank
comes
it
down
up to
to
5 speed.
Yeah, that's how I've been playing.
Yeah,
it's pretty
that's
bad.
how most people play. Yeah.
What do you do? Like,
no, the other one is for Civs. It's one of the things again. Civs 4, it had more cities. When you had cities, you'd build 6+ cities. You would just keep building them over the course of the game. You'd find all different places to put them in because they worked on a fat cross rather than a ring, and maybe the grid shape, you know, made it so you could have more cities on the map. It's hard to say, but the point is you'd have more cities. Whereas come Civs 5, they started hugely penalizing you for having lots of cities. Science would get more expensive and culture would get more expensive. And overall, you'd get slowly gimped by having lots of cities. And the reason this is bad is conquering a city shouldn't be the end of the game for you. Losing a city, I mean. Losing a city in Civs 4, it sucks, but it happens. Typically, you can lose a few cities and not have the game lost for you. You can gain a few cities and not have the game won for you. Whereas come Civs 5 and Civs 6, again, you have so few cities. Like I rarely see even the AI go above 6 cities, and it's like losing one city of 6 is a whole chunk of your empire. It's a whole chunk of your production.
Even if we're not talking about conquering cities, just expanding without the desire to expand, because getting too big wrecks you. There's no conflict, you know. In Civs 4, you expand, then you bump into someone and you go, okay, well, I guess I have to fight now because I can't expand. In Civ 6, you just expand to, like, so we're playing a game. How many turns are we in? Like 200? Maybe not that many? I don't know. The turn times are a bit tough.
Maybe.
And, yeah, we're on islands. Islands suck, whatever. But has anyone got more than, like, 5 cities? Is anyone's borders touching yet? I don't think
Barely.
so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I'm certainly not. I have 4 cities. I'm not touching anyone. I'm not even
And when
close.
we say islands, there are people on the same island. They're long, snaky islands, and people are on them together. But there's no borders touching because no one expands. And you are 100% right about the border tension thing. One of the big reasons you might go to war in Civs 4 was culture pressured adjacent cities, and if you had more culture than another city, that city would slowly get taken over.
They get absorbed into your realm because everyone likes
Yeah.
your culture better.
Yeah, and so the only way to stop that was to go and conquer their city. There was basically no other way to do it. And because your weakest cities would be on your border, they would have the least culture, meaning they were most vulnerable. So eventually this would happen, like there was no avoiding it. Eventually, if you had borders, one culture would start to prevail, and you would have to fight over it. And that was a great way to ensure that conflict kept happening in the games. But again, in Civ 5 and Civ 6, there's no pressure to conflict. There's no pressure to go, I can't let this get out of hand. The only thing that ever gets out of hand is your opponent getting closer to a win condition, and then you step in to stop them.
And then it's like in
that's
Civ
way
5,
too late.
In Civ 5, you can only touch your city can only touch resources 3 tiles away as well. So it doesn't turn into a massive spawn. I mean, 3 in each direction is quite large. Like that's cool, but yeah, it's not indefinitely expanding, or you don't care if it indefinitely expands because you can't use that stuff anyway. So when you border some other nation, you can play the whole game on someone's border and never care because you haven't really encroached. And the thing is, there's even rules saying you can't settle a city within like 3 tiles of another city. And so you settle the minimum, the closest you can to someone else, and you may never ever impact the resources that they want. And so there's no reason to go to war. It's just because expanding costs so much, it's just not worth trying to get more cities or trying to conquer. And it's definitely way too much effort to build an army just to go and sack someone's city as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the next thing I was gonna say is it's so expensive to build an army that can conquer a city, and if you fail, it's so detrimental. You have to succeed when you go to war. If you don't succeed, you've basically lost 20 or 30 turns of units production you can lose as much of. Not just because you've bought the units, but also because you've spent time building those units instead of building something that would help you in the long run. Those units you've built are purely to conquer someone or fight off conquering. And if you do not do either of those things, those units are an absolute waste. And that's just the fact of the game. Like, that's the state of the game. Anyway, I think that is about all we have time for.
Yeah, I mean, I probably sat on this screen for a bit. This is actually, I did one long video and just cut it, so
Okay.
I don't have a set. You can't save while you're in here, and I didn't want to leave because I wanted to just show this whole path. I know we've probably done it before, but I'm doing training, and that's how I tend to like doing it. I just go through the whole area once and go, yeah, okay, that was a good session, guys. Well played, pat on the back, let's go. So I'm not sure exactly how I cut it, but I think I sit on the screen deliberately for a while because whatever the cut is going to be ugly.
Yeah, I think I've said everything I have on this topic, so maybe we'll come back next time with another topic.
Right, I think the point is Civs is frustrating. Alright, well thanks to everyone for watching, and hope you enjoyed us just mincing through a few of the things in Civs and waffling about actors at the start. We'll catch you guys next time.